Welcome back to the Life of the Buddha series broadcast. In episode 10, we hear about Prince Siddhārtha's journey after leaving the palace. The prince began an ascetic life, learned to beg for alms, and adapted to his new life. He initially had difficulty sleeping outdoors and lacking amenities, but gradually got used to it. The prince traveled through many regions, including Vassali, where he noted the differences from his homeland. He met many people, from warriors to courtesans, and learned to refuse tempting invitations. Siddhārtha recognized the more subtle challenges on the path of practice, such as the respect and admiration of others. He was determined to continue his journey in search of truth, heading to the monastery of his teacher Alara. The Life of the Buddha, Episode 11, Journey to Rajagaha and the Meeting with King Bimbisara. Early the next morning, Siddhārtha set out. The monks were standing here and there. Some stood far away, silently watching. Their eyes were friendly. Some other monks approached with reluctance, embracing his shoulders, sad. The monk Pukusa, with his bowl and robe, wanted to follow, but Siddhārtha said he shouldn't, that he would know when he found the great path, completely liberated from the suffering of birth and death. Sneaking through the forests, Siddhārtha headed southeast. The morning dew was cool on his shoulders. The light, thin sunlight was rising from the east. After a while, Siddhārtha entered the highway, leaving Vassali north and stepping down to the Ganga River. Looking at the villages, activities, people, and scenery, Siddhārtha saw that this was indeed a rich and powerful country. Every now and then, Siddhārtha encountered a few caravans of merchants or horse-drawn carriages, ox carts or camels, loaded with goods pouring down to Magadha. Every now and then, a few groups of cavalrymen passed by, dressed in armor, belts, crowns, and shining weapons. Siddhārtha knew that they were the majestic warrior class of the Lichavi lineage. They had groups dressed entirely in blue, all in red, all in yellow, looking beautiful and orderly, and it was said that their army was very strict and disciplined. At noon, Siddhārtha went to beg for alms along a market village. The people placed their alms bowls respectfully and were very friendly. One, perhaps, was due to the influence of the teacher Alara, and two, due to the spiritual education tradition of the royal family. When stopping to eat or rest in the cool bushes along the roadside, Siddhārtha met ascetics. They still had alms bowls but only needed a ladle, a spoon. That's all. With their skinny bodies, sunken eyes, unkempt beards, hair like crow's nests, and dirty torn robes, they seemed to only focus on exhausting their physical needs. In some corners of the forest, Siddhārtha met some naked ascetics, who tried to avoid villages or places where people passed by, only using roots, fruits, and leaves to get by, to practice asceticism, to torture their bodies. Several conversations took place on the road. Siddhārtha knew that people everywhere respected ascetics, and the general views of these ascetics were similar. The body has too many desires, so it suffers. So to end suffering, one must eliminate the needs of the body, making all feelings numb and dormant. When the human spirit is no longer a slave to the body, it will sublimate, it will be liberated, it will merge into one with the Absolute, with the infinite Brahma. Siddhārtha did not contribute ideas, did not argue. He only listened, learned, and contemplated. There were many strange methods that Siddhārtha encountered on the road. He could not say them all, could not tell them all. He thought to himself, not to believe them yet, nor to abandon them yet. He had to study them all later. Since there was no need to rush, it took Siddhārtha only 6 yojanas to travel 10 days to reach this side of the Ganges. At a boat landing, Siddhārtha witnessed a strange, bustling scene he had never seen before in his life. There were countless ascetics and monks dressed in different clothes and with different activities. Some groups stood by the river, clasping their hands in silent prayer. Some groups went down to bathe in the sacred river to wash away all their sins and past karma. Some groups entered meditation, exposing their naked bodies to the scorching sun. Siddhārtha leisurely strolled along the banks of the red, muddy water, on the vast, endless golden sand. There were people everywhere, of all skin colors, all classes, all ages. All were men. There were only a few women. Everyone was indifferent. It seemed that no one paid attention to anyone else. Each had his own work. Some men were arranging a funeral pyre. Several funerals were placing corpses on an empty lot. Herds of cows, horses, and camels came down to the river to drink water. Large stalls, laden with goods, were bustling about, preparing to board boats to cross the river. 5 or 7 men in flashy clothes and strange appearances were weighing and measuring next to the packages of goods. They might have come from Persia or Arabia to trade and do business. This was truly a dynamic, prosperous land with rich, multifaceted activities, while Kapilavatthu was just a small district. Siddhārtha took a merchant ship across the river. Oh, the river was vast, filled with corpses and rubbish. Boats came and went busily. There were large boats carrying sheep, goats, cows, horses, camels, along with heavy cargo. The southern side of the Ganges River looked more bustling and crowded than the northern side. Siddhārtha stopped for a moment at the riverbank to witness a cremation, to see a half-burned corpse being set afloat. Just like in Kapilavatthu, no one cried or mourned for their loved ones. Everyone was familiar with life and death. It was natural. God Agni would take the soul to the blue sky. God Rama would reincarnate it or let it return to live with people. That belief gave them peace and serenity. Dying meant giving up a sick, old, decaying body, to borrow a new, younger body, full of vitality and life. The common concept of the 1,000-year-old religion turned out to also relieve the suffering before the scythe of death. Stopping in the prosperous commercial town of Patalagama for a few days, Siddhārtha observed, looked at, and listened to everything, especially the people, their life views, and religious activities. Through contact with some priests, Siddhārtha learned that in the country of Magadha there existed many sects, both within and outside the tradition. It turned out that the master Alara belonged to a small sect, Sankhya, one of the 6 Brahmin sects that flourished here. There were some sects that did not accept the authority of the Vedas and the Upanishads. They established their own groups, with their own views and ways of practicing. However, regardless of the monk, Brahmin, or priest, the people supported them and offered alms. This was a land of true religious freedom and belief. Thanks to favorable weather, people settled down and lived happily, and accordingly, religious sects developed everywhere. The food of the pious people of this land was even more abundant than that of Vaisali. While begging for alms and resting, Siddhārtha followed the commercial highway to the capital Rajagaha. He heard that in the south of Rajagaha there was a hermitage of the famous teacher Uddaka Ramaputta. He had 700 disciples who gathered around him to study and practice. He had to go there to pay homage and learn. 7 or 8 days later, Siddhārtha entered the capital of Magadha, the most splendid, wealthy, and prosperous capital at that time. Even though Siddhārtha had extensive knowledge of geography, he could not have imagined such a majestic mountain and river landscape. It turned out that the capital city of Rajagaha was located in the middle of a vast valley surrounded by many mountain ranges. Stretching from the southwest to the northeast were the Vibhara and Virgala mountain ranges like a wall. At the end of Virgala mountain range, the Rama mountain range rose, heading straight down to the south. Then the Chatta mountain range headed straight down to the east. Far to the south was the Udaya mountain range, heading down to the southwest, where they encountered the majestic Sona mountain range. Both these ranges appear to be parallel to the Vibhara and Virgala ranges, that is, extending from northeast to southwest. So the capital city of Rajagaha lies in a Z-shaped valley, surrounded by 2 walls. The outer wall is a giant belt of undulating rocks and cool green forests. With the human power, resources, time, and effort to build such a great stone wall, only the will of an empire could do it. It violently cuts across the Sona mountain, runs across rivers, streams, plains, climbs the Vibhara mountain, follows the thunder of this mountain, and reaches the end of the Virgala mountain. From here it flows south, downhill, slides up the Udaya mountain, then follows the thunder of this mountain to the southwest. The perimeter of the outer wall is said to not be very large, only about 3 or 4 yojanas, but it was probably a great project at that time. The inner city wall surrounding the ancient city of Girabaya is the isolated place of the royal palace. Next to it are the residences of the royal family, nobles, ministers, officials, generals. From there, the stone-paved roads extending further are the bustling streets of the Vaishya class, the merchant nobility, the wealthy townspeople with hundreds, thousands of grocery stores. Then there are the weapon forges, the military uniform workshops, the military equipment of the royal family, and the soldiers. The royal palace is built with stone foundations and stone walls, but the structures of the buildings, mansions, and castles are made of precious wood. The valley area spreads between the inner and outer city, with villages and houses of the middle class, including all other occupations. This is the granary of rice, fruit, vegetables, also the place to graze livestock such as goats, cows, sheep. There are also horse and elephant farms for the royal family and soldiers. Dotted in the middle of this valley are large farms of some high-ranking officials, nobles, courtesans, military generals. Most of all, there are mango gardens, medicinal plant gardens, clove gardens, anise gardens, dates, beans, tubers. As for the palm trees used to make sugar and molasses, they are everywhere, in rows and rows surrounding the houses, around the park, along the commercial highway. Between the gaps in the mountains are tall, sturdy city gates. The gate leading north is called the North Gate. Likewise, the East Gate, the South Gate. Thus, the terrain of Rajagaha was firmly defended. No army could invade, thus creating a strong and prosperous position for a long time. Thanks to such wealth and prosperity, this country was a melting pot of different sects. Wherever he heard of religious groups, Siddhārtha would go there. Indeed, this was the place where the authority of the Vedas and Upanishads was shaken. There were movements that wanted to find new spiritual values, new paths. Some went too far, falling into crude materialism, sophistry, and annihilationism, becoming heretical religions. But they still existed and were still preached here and there. Those who listened, listened. Those who believed, believed. Those who did not listen or believe, that was fine. It did not affect anyone. It was truly a place where 100 flowers bloomed. So this capital city at that time was considered the pinnacle of philosophy. Siddhārtha went to many places to listen to the traditional priests preach. They called it tradition, but they reinterpreted the Vedas, so it was called Vedanta to suit the new era. Some of them wanted to keep some secret teachings that were beneficial to the priests so that they could have exclusive contact with the gods. In general, they also sought unity, but because their reasoning was long-winded, ambiguous, contradictory, and had many loopholes, they did not help his knowledge at all. Moreover, even the Vedas, even the ancient scriptures of the Aryan lineage, Siddhārtha was familiar with, so he found their knowledge patchy, disconnected, poor, worthless. If he heard anyone talk about Brahman, Atman, the eternal, immortal self, the same as the void, the same as mustard seeds, fig seeds, sesame seeds, etc., he did not want to listen anymore. Siddhārtha was filled with that kind of ancient knowledge. Some places that talk about karma, greed, ignorance, are the work of commentators who came after the Vedas, so you can hear them, but they are still shallow and obscure. What Siddhārtha was most disheartened by was the tongue of some materialistic annihilationist and nihilistic ascetics. They denied the existence of God and the soul, and advocated that there is no good or evil, that when the body is burned, there is nothing left. So let's enjoy sensual pleasures to our heart's content. They criticized the ascetics who practice sexual abstinence. Hey friend, do you want to throw away the whole grain of rice because it is covered with a husk? Torturing the body is really crazy, insane. Strangely enough, with such an opinion, they were not considered by everyone as antisocial or immoral, harmful to humanity. Some others openly declared the doctrine of skepticism. They doubted the soul, God, saints, good and evil, moral values, destiny. They doubted everything. They swarmed, proliferated, and grew lushly like mushrooms after a few late summer rains. They went in groups, in droves, attacking traditional sects, temples, Brahmin castes, and priests. But strangely enough, the people liked to listen to them, happily made offerings, and provided them with all the four necessities. Perhaps this was a counter-reaction to create balance for society. The solemn, dignified, and serious Brahmins had long exploited them too much in their sacrifices and funerals. The landowners and owners of Brahmin farms used the labor of serfs at starvation prices, and so on. As for the ascetics, there are too many, from the crudest to the most extreme. And in general, all forms of asceticism are respected and admired by the people. The common signs of ascetics are to abandon family, wife, children, property, freedom to grow beards and hair, freedom to wear many different types of clothes, or freedom to cover up a little for formality. It depends. There are groups that remain naked. They often hide in the jungle or far from the village so as not to disturb people, especially women and girls. The most bizarre and eccentric ascetics are the most respected by everyone. The village will be proud of them, considering them as saints. There are ascetics who practice austerities with no good purpose, just to be impressive, to be formidable in a vain way, to show off their ego. There are ascetics who practice austerities with the aim of exchanging happiness in the next life, 100,000 times happier than now. There are ascetics who meditate so that later they can fly like birds, cross rivers without needing a ferry or boat. Or they can go through walls, burrow underground, and know clearly about the past and the future. There are more noble beings who practice asceticism to eliminate desire, to liberate themselves from human life, hoping to later live with the gods, Brahma, or to merge with God. They all have many terrible ways of torturing their bodies. Those who practice asceticism like cows make 2 horns on their heads, tie their tails behind them, live among the herds of cows, eat like cows, walk like cows, and sleep like cows. Those who practice asceticism like dogs live like dogs, walk like dogs, eat on the ground, bark loudly, and sleep curled up like dogs. Those who practice fasting fast until death. Some only eat once every half moon. Some only eat once at the end of the moon. Some soak in water all day. Some hang their feet and hands on trees until their feet and hands wither. Some tie themselves to trees with a rope, doing so for a few moments every day. Some always squat and eat only what falls around them. Some stand on one leg, standing still and standing, letting vines grow around them and birds make nests on their heads. Some never sleep their whole lives. Some lie on beds of nails or on piles of thorns. Some cut off one arm or one leg. Some people break it and tie it with a rope, leaving it to rot and be eaten by worms. However, most of these ascetics practice meditation. They have self-control, so they can endure physical pain. People respect them for that ability. Throughout Magadha, wandering ascetics with begging bowls have become a familiar sight. Occasionally, because of competition for fame and profit, there are a few clashes. Listen to them talk, they argue, they refute, and criticize others without giving any idea that they have knowledge. Some people are passionate about fatalism. According to this, food, clothing, sleep, thinking, happiness, and suffering cannot be changed, cannot be altered. However, no one is loyal to anyone. They join this group at will, and after a while they run to another group. They change their guru, master, like changing their food. In the capital city of Rajagaha and the towns, there are often meeting houses, which are gathering places for wandering ascetics and mendicants from all over to take shelter from the rain and sun. And they are often the places where debates take place. Whoever speaks well and wins will be given lots of gold, silver, livestock, etc. by kings, millionaires, bankers, and big merchants. Siddhārtha shook his head, both disappointed and smiling. It was true that a day's journey teaches a lot of knowledge. After only half a month here in this spiritual capital, Siddhārtha was able to generalize and visualize the entire religious life, aspirations, goals, and paths of the monastic community. The other day, resting on Pandava Mountain, not far from the capital city of Rajagaha, Siddhārtha sat in meditation, but his mind was not at peace. Because of the capital city of Rajagaha with its activities, the image of Kapilavatthu appeared. Then the misty images of his hometown, his father, his aunt, Yasodhar, Rahula, from flickering to clear. A stream of emotions arose that made Siddhārtha restless, unable to calm down. It was like that all night long. The morning sun had risen. Siddhārtha held his bowl and leisurely walked along the goat intestine path down to the foot of the mountain. As he walked, he kept his mindfulness of breathing to regain peace of mind. He had to take a new path, which was the path leading to the ancient city of Giribhaja, where the royal palace of the famous king Seniya Bimbisara resided. Here, mansion after mansion, castle after castle, the images of the pleasure palaces appeared again, but Siddhārtha was able to immediately establish his mindfulness. Siddhārtha's tall, elegant appearance, his skin as if plated with pure gold, and his calm, majestic steps made everyone pay attention and look up. In this capital, there had never been a monk who could attract people like that. As a monk of superior lineage, with a leisurely, steady, and majestic walk like the king of the jungle. This was something everyone had seen for the first time. Siddhārtha stopped, his eyes looking down, leaning over, standing in front of a house, not distinguishing whether they were rich or poor. He meditated. The space around him suddenly became quiet. It seemed like the voices and laughter from somewhere had stopped. One person, 2 people, 3 people, then 4 people quietly came out to place their bowls. Perhaps they were the most precious delicacies. Seeing that it was enough, Siddhārtha stopped them with his hand, silently recited a few words of contemplation and prayer, then turned around, walked away, and returned by another way. Siddhārtha faintly heard from behind his neck, from beside his ears, looks, small gossips, whispers. This monk is probably not human but an angel. That's right, the white 4-horse chariot was slowly passing by. King Senya Bimbisara lifted the curtain, attentively looked at Siddhārtha's appearance, demeanor, and gait, thinking he was some kind of angel. He was stunned. How could there be such a beautiful monk in the world? As if suddenly awakened, King Senya Bimbisara ordered a servant to secretly follow Siddhārtha to see where he went, what temple, inn he stayed at, then returned to report to the king. That evening, King Senya Bimbisara, riding his chariot of 4 white horses, stopped at the foot of Pandava Hill. The king slowly climbed the mountain with a guard. Siddhārtha was meditating in the shade. A halo seemed to shine from his face. There was something solemn and quiet radiating around him that made the king not dare to speak. He stood with his arms folded in respect. A moment later, as if he had a third eye, Siddhārtha knew there was a guest, so he left his meditation. Looking at his majestic, dignified figure, his clothes shining with jewels like his own, Siddhārtha knew that this was the famous King Senya Bimbisara of Jambudvipa. Very naturally, Siddhārtha nodded, smiled, showed the king a seat on the flat stone, and he found a seat opposite. Siddhārtha calmly said, "Are you the famous king of Magadha today? Please forgive me. As a monk, I cannot perform the introduction ceremony as a courtier." The king nodded. "Yes, that's right. I am Senya Bimbisara, and I am very honored to visit you, monk. Who are you? A spirit? A deva? A Brahma? Your appearance is very extraordinary, very different from the world." Siddhārtha smiled softly. "I am a mortal, your majesty. Furthermore, the path of spiritual pursuit is long and dark, not worthy of such great consideration from your majesty." Seeing his noble words, fluent and polite language, the king guessed that this was not an ordinary person, so he confided, "Oh, I ascended the throne at a young age when my father passed away. At only 14 years old, I had to act like an adult, be upright, dignified, and exemplary in order to rule the country. This year I'm 24 years old, so for 10 years I have had no childhood, no innocence, always having to worry, calculate hundreds of things, no joy, no smile. For all these years, I have not had a single friend to confide in. Surrounded by hundreds of people, always bowing, greeting, obeying, long live, long live. I cannot blame them because that is the law of the court, because my authority is absolute. But strangely enough, this morning, as soon as I caught a glimpse of the monk, I immediately felt as if it were a close friend who had wandered away from a previous life. I wished that the monk would come back with me to be my friend. With the forehead, eyes, language, smile of the monk, I know for sure that the monk is a superior person, intelligent, talented, virtuous, far surpassing humans. If there is a monk by my side to advise and counsel, I know for sure that the country will be strong and the people will be more prosperous and happy." Siddhārtha observed the king, saw that he seemed sincere and had the demeanor of a wise king. He gently said, "Thank you for your kind words, your majesty. But I am used to a solitary life and prefer the wilderness and quiet of the mountains and forests. The splendid imperial palace is no longer suitable for me. The life of a homeless monk is too hard. The food you beg for depends on the donors and is not enough to nourish your body. You only have a thin piece of clothing to wear. You don't have a bed, blanket, or mosquito net to sleep in. Come back to the city with me, and I will give you the most luxurious and comfortable palace. I will also choose a few dozen of the most beautiful women in Rajagaha to serve you. They will carry towels, fix bags, arrange pillows, hang mosquito nets." Siddhārtha bowed his head, humbly. "I appreciate your kindness and goodwill. It is indeed your highest privilege, but I am not used to that life. I am searching for the eternal meaning and value of human life. I will find the path to immortality to save all beings from suffering. That is my purpose, Your Majesty." King Senya Bimbisara still did not give up, wanting to persuade him further, but slowly asked, "How old is the monk this year?" "Sir, 29 years old." "Oh, so young. Only 5 years older than me. Well, let's do this. Come back with me. I will give the monk half of the kingdom. We will both rule and enjoy happiness. A few decades later, when you are old and weak, and all the pleasures of life are boring, then just hand it all over to me, and it won't be too late to become a monk." Siddhārtha smiled and commented gently, "Your Majesty, you are wrong. The path of cultivation is not simple. It is a journey of hardships and hardships. You need to have physical strength, willpower, and determination to get to the destination. So, to become a monk, you need the enthusiasm and youthful energy of youth. If you become a monk when you are old, you will not achieve anything. You will only find a little leisure and peace and tranquility on the outside. What is even more difficult is that right now, my search, the goal and the path have never existed in this world, so the luggage and provisions for the journey require an unwavering will and determination. There are still many difficulties, and only the young can do it. Please forgive me, Your Majesty, and let me follow the path I have chosen." King Senya Bimbisara nodded. "What eloquence, what beauty, what words as firm as a rock. This is the first time I have heard of such a thing in my life. And it is also the first time in my life that someone has been given half of a kingdom, a palace, beautiful women, and power without being moved." Thinking for a moment, the king continued, "With a person like the monk, with his strong arguments, strong will, high flat forehead, and clear blue eyes, there is no difficulty that the monk cannot achieve, even becoming the holy wheel-turning king of the entire Jambudvipa continent. I do not find fault. My respect and admiration are multiplied many times over." Looking at Siddhārtha's calm and peaceful expression, the king suddenly asked, "I am a bit curious, so I wonder where the monk is from. What is his origin and lineage? Can you tell me?" "Yes, it's fine," Siddhārtha said. "Far to the northwest, at the foot of the majestic Himalayas, there is an ancient Sakya clan, the heroic Sun lineage, the small, peaceful capital city of Kapilavatthu, which is my homeland. Oh, my name is Siddhārtha. My family name is Gautama. I am the son of King Suddhodana. My mother is Queen Mahamaya, who died early. I got married at the age of 16 and had a son to carry on the family line." "Go on, monk. I want to hear." "For a long time, I have been bored with the luxury of the 5 desires in the 3 palaces of joy, and also afraid of being bound when the emperor chose the day to ascend the throne. So I hid from everyone, left the capital, and became a monk to seek the path at midnight, just a few months ago, Your Majesty." The king was so surprised that he exclaimed, "It turns out that the monk is a king who has boldly given up his throne, beautiful wife, and pretty children. So I have been disrespectful. I have used fame, power, and the 5 desires to seduce someone who has given up the 5 desires, fame, power, and wealth." The king lowered his voice and said friendly, "The peaceful kingdom of Sakya and my Magadha have been close friends for many generations. From here to there is about 60 or 70 yojanas, not very far. The mighty king of Kosala next door, King Pasenadi, is also a close friend. I will not hide anything from you, monk, that my queen is the younger sister of King Pasenadi. Furthermore, I will have a diplomatic policy with Kosala so that Kapilavatthu can be at peace. Monk, do not be afraid of anything. Go your own way, but I hope that you will consider me as your friend. Later, when you have discovered the great path, please visit my kingdom, visit me, and allow me to be offered the 4 requisites. I am ready to make a sacred promise to be by your side, to be your right hand, to protect the immortal path of the monk, so that it can flourish in this kingdom." Seeing the young king, full of power and glory, humble himself like that, Siddhārtha respectfully promised that after he attained enlightenment, he would return to this prosperous land. King Senya Bimbisara bowed, took his leave, and descended the mountain. Siddhārtha also prepared to leave, not wanting to receive any more favors from the king or the royal family of this country. Knowing the place, they would visit, come and go. Then they would have to talk, greet, listen, wasting so much of his precious time. He walked on, following the goat intestine path, to the southeastern gate, saying goodbye to Rajagaha, to another mountain. There was a teacher not far from him. Dear ladies and gentlemen, had to go to him. You have just listened to the video about the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, adapted from the work A Life, a Sun and Moon by Master Gioi Duc. This video series will be broadcast at 7 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the YouTube channel Buddhist Story. We sincerely thank you for watching. To not miss the next episodes, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. If you find the content useful, please share this video with your relatives and friends. All your comments are very valuable to us. Please leave comments below the video so we can discuss and share together. Thank you, and see you again in the next episodes of the video series, The Life of Buddha Shakyamuni.